Good morning, everyone. And I really appreciate, as well as the rest of the council, that you folks took some time out of your busy weekend on a very hot day. So thank goodness we're doing it indoor rather than outdoor. This is your town hall meeting. Certainly, we're going to have a presentation today, but there will be time for question and answers. And the primary focus, of course, is our park system. But there will be some time set aside for open forum at the end of this discussion for anybody that wants to talk about something else in Fridley. So whether you do it publicly or towards the end of this this session, or just come up to us individually, we'll stick around afterwards if somebody's got something on their mind other than the parks today. So with that, obviously we have our council members here, and I'll introduce them: Dave Oswald, Tom Tilbury, Steve Eggert, Ann Balcom, myself as mayor, Scott Lund, and we do have a number of various volunteer commission members. I'd like to recognize them as well. Pete Borman, I see him in the back. Eric and Ryan, the Evanson brothers, and Mike up front, and Ken, he's relatively new. Thanks, Ken. And Ross Meisner. And did I miss any city commissioners? Okay, sorry, thanks. Okay, great. Two more that I missed. Well, I looked through the audience and didn't catch them all, but we'll also have with us today is County Commissioner Mandy Meisner. Mandy, appreciate her coming as well, and hope that we have a lively discussion. And what we're really looking for is your input on what you want to see in the parks in Fridley. So we have some ideas we want to present today. Obviously, they've been working on this close to 3 years now. So it's time to get information from the public, and ultimately we come to some consensus to enhance our parks, hopefully. We want to thank the attendees on the Zoom webinar as well. So with that, in case I missed anything, somebody else will interject. But the next up in this plan is introducing Mike Mayer, who is our Fridley's Director of Community Service now. Mike has got a new role in the city of Fridley. He is no longer the director here only. He now oversees Springbrook and our public park system. So Mike, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Lund. Well, good morning, and I want to echo Mayor Lund's sentiments in welcoming everyone here to Springbrook Nature Center for our town hall meeting, and also wanted to say good morning to everybody that's tuned in over Zoom. It feels great to be able to gather together like this. It's a bit surreal, but feels really good to be able to get together with all of you here this morning. So welcome and thank you. So as we gathered together here this morning, we've got a really unique opportunity. Our goal together today is to be able to take a look at our public park system. And I've been a part of this process for a couple of years. And from my experience, the very best work that we can do happens when we get together with a group of people and we have shared goals, a shared vision, and we find common ground. And we have that opportunity together today to talk about our public park system, and through conversation, through gathering ideas, to find that common ground. And as we talk about that term, common ground, it can be kind of a figurative thing where we talk about kind of getting on the same page, sharing ideas, but also we can look at that kind of literally as we talk about our public park system. Because the amazing thing about public parks is that they belong to all of us. And what our process is today is to involve all of you in helping us to find that common ground. We want to hear your ideas, your feedback, your input on what you want to see with our Fridley Park system. So that's our objective today, is to find common ground. Our park system here in Fridley is pretty amazing. We have got a great starting point as we look to improve our parks. We've got 38 parks here that are city parks. We've got great Anoka County parks We are blessed to be on the Mississippi River and have beautiful Rice Creek here in the city of Fridley. We've got some great schools that offer park-like amenities. We've got 35 miles of paths, trails, and sidewalks, and 10.4 miles of county trails. So we have a lot to work with when we look at improving our public parks. Now, as Mayor Lund mentioned, I have been extremely blessed and fortunate to come here to Fridley about 8 years ago. It was a great opportunity for me and my family, and I have loved every minute of working here for the city of Fridley as the director of Springbrook Nature Center and now as the director of community services. And one of the most rewarding parts of that 8 years of time has been watching Fridley change and transform during that time. I have seen some amazing changes, as all of you have as well, to our businesses and retail establishments. Housing has really changed here. We've seen some beautiful housing developments here in the city of Fridley. North Star Rail site and the surrounding development there. The population is getting younger. We are growing, and we'll learn more about that later on today as we talk about a resident survey that was conducted. Obviously, for me, one of the amazing and really rewarding processes was seeing the changes that happened here at Springbrook Nature Center. And of course, we have the beautiful new Fridley Civic Campus that all of us can enjoy together. So a lot has changed here in the city of Fridley for the better. But one thing that hasn't changed as much has been our city parks. We've seen some great changes here at the Nature Center. We've seen some improvements that have happened throughout the park system, but really the approach with the parks has been maintenance. We've kept up the parks. Our parks maintenance team does an amazing job keeping the parks looking good, keeping them safe, but we really haven't had that big investment in our park system. So what we're looking at is really a park system that was set up 50 years ago, and it's been maintained, and we've kind of held steady with the parks, but we haven't seen that big improvement. We haven't seen those dramatic changes to modernize our park system. So there hasn't been a strategic long-term vision for the parks. We're kind of lagging behind in accessibility in our park system. Some of our playgrounds are like 30 years old. We're at the point where we look at a playground, the slide breaks, we look, they don't make it anymore. We can't order it, we can't fix it. We got to take it out, we got to replace it. So a lot of the park infrastructure is aging, and it's just kind of wearing out. So some of those things, like that example of the play system that we can't find the replacement parts for, sometimes we just have to take those out at this point in time. Our parks team has gone out and they did a really detailed assessment of the park system over the last couple of years. They kind of did a grading system, you know, A, B, C, you know, all the way through up. And essentially about 60% of our parks through their assessment were at average or less. So really we're looking at a park system that is well maintained, but has aged and is in need of some revitalization. As we look at a plan to improve our park system, the process to this point has been our city council, they take a lot of pride in connecting with our community, speaking with residents, and one of the recurring themes has been our park system. So they have heard from all of you, from residents, from citizens, that there's concerns about the park system, that they want to do something, they want to see some improvements. We've heard that from you. But our job as city staff, then, we heard from council, well, you know, we hear from residents, all right? And there's always the one person that calls and talks to us all the time, right? But there's a lot of people that don't reach out to us. So our job as city staff was to kind of figure out, well, are we just hearing from a few people that our parks need work? Or are we hearing from our community at large? Are we hearing from everybody? Do we have consensus that our parks need attention? So that was kind of our task as city staff. So we've talked to all of you, and what we decided to do was to kind of launch a strategic plan. So out of that process of, okay, our council has heard from all of you, we need to figure out how, are we hearing from the community that our parks need attention? So we decided to talk to as many residents as possible. We decided to be really strategic, to be really deliberate about the process. And we started an initiative called Finding Your Fun in Fridley. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that right now. So what are the benefits of doing this in a comprehensive way? So to look at the entire park system. Number one, it allows us to learn what you want. These are your parks. As I said in the beginning, we want the park system to reflect what our community wants. Number two is that it gives us as city staff a process where we're not just sitting down and saying, okay, what do we want as city staff? It gives us a process where we can plan these community meetings. We can reach out to a diverse audience. We can make sure that we're connecting with everybody in our community in different ways and shapes. So it gives us a process. It gives us a long-term vision for the park system. It allows us to find out what gaps there are, what are we missing, and it allows us the opportunity to look across the entire park system and figure out, are there some redundancies? Do we have two playgrounds that are right next to each other that have the same features? Do we have two tennis courts that are right there? Can we remove one and put something different in? It gives us that big picture viewpoint. It gives us the opportunity, as we look across the entire park system, to figure out what trends are there. Just one example, we hear a lot about pickleball. Has anybody heard of that? Yeah, it's one of those things we keep hearing it again and again and again. And so it gives us that opportunity to say, okay, this is the trend. This is something that people are interested in. And it gives us that opportunity to integrate some of those current trends in recreation into the park system. Gives us that opportunity to look at ADA compliance and sort of that inclusivity piece in the park system to make sure that we're making our parks accessible to everyone in our community. And then, we know that the park system improvements there's gonna be some costs involved with that. And this process of connecting with residents, engaging the community, it gives us not only the opportunity to hear what your ideas are, but what your priorities are. So that when it comes time to figure out how we're gonna fund these potential improvements, we know what your values are. What are the most important things to you as we look at putting some improvements into our park system? And then, of course, Springbrook Nature Center here is a great example of this, and multiple parks in our system are natural resource based. And this opportunity to look at our park system gives us that chance to really look at our role as environmental stewards. The park system, the city at large, we play a large part in making sure that we're being good stewards of the environment. And this gives us that opportunity to use our park system for opportunities such as putting in pollinator gardens and doing good stormwater management. So environmental stewardship is a big part of this process. And then finally, I'll in a few minutes here, I'm going to introduce one of our consultants on the project, Candace Amberg. But one of the great things that she and her firm WSB did was to really do an analysis of our park system and really look at equity across the community and make sure that every citizen, every resident in Fridley had accessibility to parks. And she'll talk a little bit more about that. But this comprehensive process allowed us to really kind of look at equity within our park system. So these are benefits of taking a big picture look at the parks. Finding Your Fun in Fridley. This initiative really kind of launched back in 2019. And maybe I'll just ask for a quick show of hands here. How many of you in some way, shape, or form, completing a survey, attending a meeting, and of course, I guess you could all raise your hands for attending the meeting today, but before today, how many of you provided some input on our park system? Oh, wow, that's amazing. All right, so like the majority of you. So that means we did a good job, right? I think. So first of all, thank you for doing that. That was our goal, was to connect with as many residents as possible to gather feedback about the park system. And the process launched back in 2019. We held a series of community workshops at the Fridley Civic Campus. So our goal to kick off the Finding Your Fun in Fridley initiative was to find out, like, where do we start? Like, what do people want to see? What are the values in the park system? So we did that. We held those 4 community workshops. We launched an online initiative called Social Pinpoint, which had sort of a map of our park system and allowed people to create some feedback. So we started doing all those things to get the big trends, the big picture idea of what people wanted to see. And what we learned through this process of kicking off the engagement was that people wanted parks that were safe and connected. Things like ADA compliance, good lighting, good restroom access. We learned that natural resources were huge. We heard that again and again and again, that people wanted access to nature. So that was something we heard loud and clear. So trails, year-round use, winter recreation, things that were sustainable and environmentally friendly. And we heard that people wanted a few high-quality, unique facilities. So those were kind of the trends. And once we had those trends, we kind of began to create a vision for the park system. And today, our goal again is to connect with you, find out if we're on track. Is this our shared vision? That's our goal today, is to kind of connect with all of you and come out of this meeting with a shared vision for our park system. But what we heard was that we didn't want these huge, massive, expensive projects to happen. We didn't want a brand new community center. We didn't want an aquatic center, not golf courses, things like that. What we heard was that we wanted to take the great parks that we have and modernize them, improve them, kind of bring them into the modern era. So just raising the bar of what we have, making it better and improving the parks with maybe a few unique amenities mixed in. We heard a lot about maybe a splash pad or some of those things, but just taking what we have, modernizing and improving was the trend that we heard. Now, we knew that this process was not going to be easy. Taking thousands of bits of data from online surveys, from community meetings, from conversations that we have with residents, and creating a comprehensive plan across 38 parks is a very complex process. So we knew that we were going to need some help. So the city brought on a partner with this project. WSB is a firm that does landscape architecture and consulting. And we brought on Candace Amberg here as the project lead for the city of Fridley. And please join me in welcoming her. She's going to talk a little bit about the process that WSB went through to analyze our city park system and provide some good recommendations. So I'll go ahead and turn things over to you, Candace. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Again, my name is Candace Amberg. I'm a landscape architect and been doing parks and recreation for about 25 years now. Thank you. And so what we were brought in to do is just continue the efforts that the city had already started. They've had already undertaken like a 2-year process of getting this master plan study going. And so we are just supplementing and kind of continuing those efforts. So our main goal was to figure out an implementation plan. So that's kind of looking at, what can we do to guide the investments for the future? What is that going to take? And kind of coming up with a strategy for what makes most sense for making these improvements. What are the priorities? How do we balance recreation across the community? What's most important for the community? And so that's what we're doing right now, is coming up with a strategic method and prioritization that is in line with the 2040 comprehensive plan goals that were set. All right, so the very first thing we did was take an analysis of the existing system. So we went out to each individual park. The city had already done like their assessment. I kind of look at it in a slightly different manner. So we also take a look at the same things they did, where we need to understand what kinds of amenities were at each of these parks, because they each offer a little bit different things at some of them. Some of them are more passive in nature, some are more active. And then we also looked at the condition. So what are the age, the condition of the amenities? As Mike mentioned, what's the accessibility level? What are some of the concerns that we should take a look at? But then we also look at the park's location within the community. So we look at where a park is located into relation of the populations it is being served. And we break up the city into what we call neighborhood service areas. And so a neighborhood service area is a specific neighborhood that's broken up by major barriers. Barriers include larger roadways, water bodies, railroad lines, things that would kind of limit or prohibit access for somebody to get from their place of residence to that park. And so a main goal for any park system is to have a park within what we say is a 10-minute walk. So that's a half-mile radius. And that's kind of the standard that we try to set. If a park is not within that half-mile radius, we look at, okay, how do we get people to that park? Do we have a good system of, sidewalks and trail systems to help get them to that park? And is there a safe manner for getting across some of those barriers? So what we found is the majority of the city is doing quite well in making sure that their populations are within that half-mile radius. In some instances, we found out where there were some duplication of amenities. So as Mike mentioned, there may be the same tot lot. It's only a couple of blocks away. Are there things we can do to change the use of one of those parks so that it's more balanced and meets a different need? And then in other locations, there were distinct areas where there were neighborhoods that did not have access to a quality park. Whether it was a barrier or just outside of that distance, those are some of the areas that we look at in terms of coming up with a strategy for implementation. So not only do we take into consideration what the people want, they may say, for instance, we heard a lot, Moore Lake is our gem. That's the gem of our community. We need to focus on that. We take that into consideration, but we also look at the areas that we consider being underserved. We want to make sure the entire population across the community has access to a good quality park. And so with that, we initiated engagement with our stakeholders and came up with some conceptual plan designs for the parks. Along with that, we drafted a implementation strategy and related cost estimates for what those improvements would take. Because obviously the city was very concerned about, okay, what is it going to cost to actually make some of these improvements in the future, and how do we handle that? So as part of that, we come up with preliminary estimates. Obviously they change over time and as designs are changed with that, but at least we have a good starting point to work from. And then we created the Story Map website where we have that interactive map so that we could make sure that the community had access to these plans and provide their input. Because we want to collect, additional input as we go through the entire process from the community to make sure we're in line with community sentiment. All right, so the draft implementation strategy, as I mentioned, is to just make sure that we're balancing recreation across the community, as well as meeting the needs of diverse demographics. Because some of the things that we hear in the surveys is, we ask, do you visit the parks? What parks do you go to? And I've gotten comments where it says, what, our kids are grown. We don't go to parks anymore. And it's like, well, obviously we're missing something if we're not meeting the needs of that group as well. Parks are more than just for somebody, little kids playing on a playground. We have to think about the parents of the kids, young adults, teens, seniors, you name it. The parks need to be for all. And we need to make sure that, we're accounting for all ages, all abilities, and all cultures when we think about making these improvements. And so with that, we're again, these kind of just highlight some of the areas that we said, they don't have a park, what can we do to make improvements for that? And also account for some of the changes in recreation. Because we want to make sure that the community here doesn't have to go to a different community to find what they need in terms of recreation. We want to make sure that that's accessible within this community. And so with that, we've gotten great responses. I think, the residents around here are really involved, and we want to continue that process. We want to keep that, partnership going and build champions to support some of these projects in the future and help us prioritize. So we need to understand what's going to be most important to make these meaningful improvements for the community. So the concepts plans that were prepared were based on goals that were set in the previous efforts from the city. And so as Mike mentioned, enhance the unique identity of our community parks. They all offer something very special. We want to play upon those special features of those community parks. We also want to improve, update, modernize all of our parks, whether the neighborhood parks, community parks, or special use parks, so that they're more in line with people are looking for today. And of course, the new recreational trends, because there's always something new popping up. So it's always good to add a little bit of flexibility into the system to account for those changes in the future. We want to make sure that we have space to remove or change or modify our parks moving forward as new, recreation trends continue to evolve. And obviously increase connectivity. So making sure that we can get people from where they live to where they want to go in a safe manner, and simply trails are just the #1 amenity we hear all the time anyway. So that's always great to make sure we have a good system. Right now you have a great system to start from, and it's just kind of filling in those little gaps. And then of course, environmental stewardship. No matter what park site we were talking about, that came up a lot. So people are very concerned that, you know, they want to make sure whatever we do, that we're keeping that in mind and following good stewardship. So there were community or concept plans developed for the community parks in the initial stages. Those were done by another consultant. And those were for Moore Lake, Commons Park, and Community Park. So those were on our interactive map, kind of on their own little separate page on that. And then we came in and we developed, you know, just conceptual plans for all the smaller and special use parks. So again, those were on a separate tab. Hopefully people understood that. And then we put all this information online on our story map page. So again, people could access those plans, take a look at them, and had a survey attached with each of them so they could give us feedback. So we needed to understand, okay, here's a plan. We just wanted to put something in front of you and get a reaction. So what do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What are some other ideas that you have for this? And that gives us some great information to work from so that we can continue to make refinements to these concept plans. And just so you know, as we make refinements, they're going to be uploaded or updated on the story map page. So they will always be there, but they will remain concept plans. So keep that in mind. So even though you see a plan up there, it's not final. So this is just an idea. And as future efforts are undertaken to kind of work through some of these designs, you know, that engagement effort will continue. So we'll, you know, be talking more with community, making further refinements before anything is actually implemented. And as I mentioned, you guys were great. So we had over 1,000 surveys submitted. I think that has got to be a record for any other projects that I've worked on. So it was a lot of information to go through, but it was good quality information. So the reason we do this is people know their parks, they know how they're used, they know what, you know, their neighborhood is looking for. And that's what we really needed to get back and hear back, which we did. And then the city went ahead and they went out and met individually at all these different parks throughout the city to talk with people who were actually using these park systems. So even though they would go to, like, for instance, Creek Ridge, have an event there, the people there not only talked about Creek Ridge, but they talked about other parks that they had been to as well. And that allowed for more in-depth information. It allowed for good conversation to really fill in, you know, some things that you just don't get from a survey. So again, you know, the great efforts by the city. I think they talked to over 145 residents during some of those meetings. And then, you know, throughout this process, we just want to continue to connect with the community. So we have met with key stakeholders, we've taken resident phone calls, emails. The city's put a lot out on social media, which has really helped get the information out to the community and allow people to give us those surveys. And then we've also held presentations to the city commission and city advisory groups. Recently, the city undertook a resident survey, and I will let Mike talk more in depth about that.
Thank you, Candace. So again, in a few minutes here, we're going to open this up for questions, comments, feedback from you. We want to hear from you today. That's our goal today. And part of that process of us listening was that the city did go through the process over the past few months of doing a community survey. So this is a process that you're going to learn more about later on in this town hall meeting. So we'll fill you in more on that. But essentially, what happened is we conducted this, what's called a statistically valid survey, which means we talked to a lot of people in the community, and a few trends that applied to the park system. Number one is we learned that Fridley's getting younger. New people are moving to this community, younger people, a younger demographic is coming into Fridley. A lot of people are moving to Fridley because they want to call it home. And that's a really exciting thing for us to hear as city employees, as a city council, that people are coming here not just as a place to live, but they're thinking of Fridley in the long term. They're thinking of it as a forever home, which is very exciting. Residents believe that parks are a key integral part of their quality of life. So the quality of our parks are a direct reflection of their quality of life. is something that we heard loud and clear through this survey. Also, we heard from residents that the appearance of parks from the resident perspective has a direct reflection on the value of their property. And so if we look at improving the park system, that helps everyone here through value of your homes and so forth. And we also, one of the questions in the survey related to the willingness to invest into the park system. And what we heard was that a majority of residents showed a willingness to invest in the park system. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here as we finish off this presentation. So more details coming on that. As Candace mentioned, really our approach every step of the way was to build this park improvement plan around what we heard from you as residents. So what are we doing with all this feedback that we got? Well, we're using it to refine the park concept plans that WSD came up with. So everything that we hear, we're kind of looking at through the lens of community feedback. As I mentioned earlier, the priorities with the park system, we know we're not going to be able to do everything. We can't go in and do absolutely everything that we want. So we're listening as to what is the most important components of park improvements from the community. And also we're hearing from you on, we have not yet identified how we're going to do this. So part of this process is talking with all of you, hearing your ideas on what the potential funding mechanisms could be should we decide to move forward with a park improvement plan. If we do that, what are the benefits? I talked a little bit about this with the resident survey, but a few benefits of improving the park system. Our city council created some goals. They called it Focus on Fridley. And those goals were vibrancy, safety, and environmental stewardship. And as we've talked about, improving our parks helps with all three of those goals and initiatives. We want to really be mindful of accessibility to our parks, that every resident can get to a park, can enjoy a park, can feel that they're safe in our park system. So a park improvement plan will help with that. It allows us, we've got a great nature center staff here. We've got a great recreation staff in the city of Fridley, and improving our parks improves our ability as program staff to be able to put on quality recreation programs. So not only does it enhance the physical parks, it enhances our ability to create engaging, fun, educational programs in the park system. We heard from residents that improving our parks helps increase property values, and it also attracts new residents, visitors, and businesses. And then something that's really important is to think about not only how we improve the park system, but thinking about that next generation. And we've got an opportunity right now to set the next generation up for success, to provide them with an amazing, fun, safe, accessible park system. So it's thinking about not just today, but keeping in mind parks for tomorrow. And one of the final thoughts that I'll leave you with is we've seen this. We've seen this firsthand. And this is something that really really resonates with me and is really important to me. I mentioned that I've worked here for the city of Fridley for 8 years. When I started here, Springbrook Nature Center looked very different than it does today. And a lot of work and a lot of people invested time, effort to improve Springbrook Nature Center. And when we look at the before and the after, we have a beautiful, amazing facility here that's been modernized. And I will tell you, I know we can't invest this kind of money in every single park in Fridley, but what has happened here at Springbrook Nature Center by improving the lighting, improving the security, beautifying the facility, it's not just the physical improvements. There's been sort of a cultural improvement here in that this place now provides a point of pride for the community. People are so proud of this place. And other things have happened too. We used to have break-ins in the parking lot all the time. It doesn't happen anymore. Vandalism, graffiti, all that stuff has really tailed off. I'm gonna just knock on wood. But seriously, like the improvements that happened here have really made some significant changes. And I think it tells a powerful story that improving our entire park system will change the mentality of all of us here in Fridley, in that we will be extremely proud of our park system. We'll see some of those things that we don't want to see happen in our parks won't happen anymore. And parks can really be a point of pride for all of us here in the community. They already are, but I think that pride really has some room for growth. So we've seen it happen, and I will tell you from my own personal experience, it has been a really powerful experience. What happened here at Springbrook can happen throughout our entire community. So we've talked a little bit about what happens if we do this. And my final thoughts will be, what happens if we don't? So we currently, I've just kind of been doing the maintenance, right? The park system is going to continue to get older, and we can, we can replace one playground a year. We can, patch up the trails. We can keep doing those things, but the park system will continue to deteriorate. And at the current level that we're putting money into the park system to do all the stuff that we've talked about, all the improvements that Candace and her team have drawn up based on your feedback, it would take us 137 years to do. So I don't know about you, but I don't have that kind of time. So we'll continue to see the deterioration of our assets. And as that gets worse, there's potential for injury, there's potential for, things to just really continue to deteriorate. And as we can elevate the pride in our park system and elevate that feeling of these parks are amazing, if we don't act, it's only going to get worse. That we're going to look at our parks and we're going to see things continue to deteriorate, fade, and where we see people saying, well, if we improve the parks, it's going to improve my property values. If the parks continue to deteriorate, the opposite's going to happen, and property values to go down. And really, the last question I'll leave you with is, if we don't do this now, if all of us don't, talk about, yeah, let's figure out a way to get it done. When's it going to happen? Who's going to do it? If not us, then who? And if not now, then when? So I'll leave you with that thought. And at this point in time, I will turn things over to our city manager, Wally Weishopel, who's going to talk a little bit about the potential ways that we could figure out how to make this park improvement plan happen. So join me in greeting Wally Weishopel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. One of the other hallmarks of the city of Fridley is the fact that we are very financially conscientious, and we don't spend money unless we need to. So we go into this whole park master planning process by taking a look at where do we spend our capital, and where do we invest in, how do we invest in things. We have a citywide park improvements are going to cost us millions of dollars to take care of if we do everything, and we attend to each and every neighborhood park like we heard feedback about. Park improvements have been kind of a secondary critical infrastructure because we always have looked at utilities, our water, our sewer, our streets, our public safety, all those things take a higher level of importance over parks. That's just been a tradition of most cities. And the funding sources for such an investment plan are somewhat limited to us as well, as far as how can we afford to invest in our parks. So as we looked at all this investment that we wanted to do, it could cost us about $50 million is what the estimates are if we do all the parks as were expressed in the current program. So what we need to look at is try to find some balance with that. How do we balance the costs with our willingness to pay, with our financial prudency, right? To go into any purchase, to any initiative, knowing that you can't always get everything that you do want, but how do we afford to get the things that we really need to have in order to build the type of community that Mike was referencing and the mayor and the city council have moved staff to do. So we do know from the resident survey that we were just conducted, that we did some testing questions, and they're not intended to say this is exactly how much people are willing to give. But as the consultant tells us, they give us some guide rails, some guardrails to say it's somewhere within a range of things. And we know that from this initial testing, we were told it's about $10 a month people are willing to pay more for parks. And that would translate into about a $25 million bond if people were willing to pay about $10 more a month. And this is just kind of the back of the envelope, kind of the napkin kind of expression, if you would. So there's other things that go into how do you initiate bonding or a type of financing program that it deals with the size that you're going to initiate, how many years it might take that you want to do these things. Obviously, with all these parks, we can't do them all tomorrow. They're going to take many years, and that's part of the financing that has to be analyzed. So we need to go forward knowing that we can't do everything, all right, because of limitations of what people are willing to pay, and also what limitations are out there in terms of what we can issue bonds for, what would be appropriate for the city. But we want to move forward to hear from you some more to say, how do we take this big needs and wants list and put it into those guardrails that are reasonable enough so that we don't have to wait 137 years to get this done? And to that, I'm going to bring up the mayor of the city of Fridley, Scott Lund, again, and we'll kind of move it into this next phase here of some discussion. I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Well, thanks for bearing with us this morning. I know it's a lot to absorb, but you heard maybe in the presentation about being champions. And by virtue of you attending today, whether here in person or on Zoom, you are becoming champions of the park. And that's what the council and I and staff are looking for. We want your involvement. We want this to be what you want in your parks. And to move this forward, we need park champions. And I thank you for that. I've often been proud of our citizens because time and again, they have stepped up to the plate, so to speak, and have allowed and encouraged some newness in our community by virtue of Mike spoke about this facility here and our new city hall are two primary examples. And I hope that all of you are very proud to say, I'm a resident of Fridley and look at us. I mean, we've come a long way over some time now. And we now are into this next step as in our parks. And I think we can all be proud as park champions to move this forward. And I hope that you will share that with us and be a strong part in getting to that end. It will take time, no doubt. We're going to open up with the Q&A, and maybe out of fairness, a couple people in the audience, and then maybe the staff can come up with a question from comment from the web, from the Zoom attendees, so that we all get a little, so we have some equality there. But so that this is being taped, and so that everybody can hear, whether on Zoom or here in person, just raise your hand when you want to pose a question or comment. And Wally or one of the staff members will run around, so wait for the microphone to come to you before we start talking, and I'd appreciate it. And with that, Wally, I guess you're the one that's got the, Mike's going to take it. Okay, Mike, great.
All right, well, this is your opportunity to ask questions, share ideas. Us listening to you every step along the way is a process that we're committed to. So we'd love to hear your questions and comments.
All right, I'm Walter. $20 to start with my park per month. Just saying. Flannery and Spring Lake. First of all, let me just commend you guys on what you do in Fridley. I don't have a lot of complaints. I really don't. Parks maybe need a little facelift here and there, nothing major. I'm the one that brought up the pickleball. I think that there are communities where there aren't a lot of kids, and there are big kids like me and older kids that would like to play, find something to play with in our neighborhoods. So that's all I wanted to say, really, is just there aren't a lot of kids in my surroundings, in my community around Spring Lake Park, or Spring Lake and Flannery, and I would just like to see more attention. You already brought that up about taking care of the bigger kids.
It's important to play at any age, isn't it?
Hey, good morning, guys. I'm Mandy Meisner, Anoka County Commissioner. I'm going to echo Wally's comments. First of all, I just want to give my compliments to the city of Fridley and for everyone in this room and in this call. It is challenging to do community outreach. Fridley has about 27,000 residents, so the fact that you guys are here giving input and that you guys asked for input is really huge. The only really kind of comment and update from the county side that I want to make, Mike, you mentioned ADA compliance as one of the bullets. So for county park system, we have our own, but they do overlap with city. Rice Creek Trail is a regional park, so that is one area where the county and the city work in partnership together. So we, the county, are also going to be updating some ADA compliance issues. It will not be happening until 2024, really, but just wanted to let you guys know that. And then I guess really just my last comment is, everyone had mentioned that this is a process, so the folks here today in the room and on the call, we all have friends and neighbors that live in Fridley. So please tell your friends and neighbors that this is the time to talk about investing. What are we willing to do? What does that look like? And these are the folks that are going to be listening. So thank you, Mandy Meisner.
Let's take another one from the floor, and then Luke, if we have any from the Zoom call, we'll take a look at that. So I saw a hand way back here.
Hi, I'm Liz Novotny. I just moved to Fridley here in March. I'm very excited to be a part of the community and join in this endeavor of improving our parks. I have two points. What success has there been in obtaining information from tenants and renters? While they may not have ownership in Fridley, they're definitely here, they're spending their money, and they're enjoying the parks. So what success has there been in getting information from the tenants? And my second thought and question is, has there been any, and what success is there in finding money from some philanthropic entities? Have there been any grants applied for? I know Bill and Melinda Gates are getting divorced, and I know that there are a lot of entities out there that are looking for this specific. How can they improve parks and nature? So, where are we going with that?
Mike, is that something you can address with regard to the first question on the apartments, people who are renting in Fridley?
Sure. Welcome to the community. It's good to have you here. I'm glad that you found us in Fridley. Just one example that comes up. I know one of the strategies that we used was to go out into the park system and have our staff kind of set up and just be there and have conversations with residents. And I know that the parks that we chose to go out to specifically to have those conversations where we talked with those 145 residents, we specifically chose parks that were near some of our housing developments, apartments and other places, because we know that we specifically wanted to connect with those individuals that are living in some of our apartment and townhome communities, manufactured home communities. So we specifically chose those parks that were in those areas of high concentration of some of that kind of apartment housing communities. So that's one example. And certainly if any of my colleagues have other specific examples that they can think of, feel free to share those. But we definitely are mindful that we are trying to get out into the community and connect with folks directly. And as far as the second question goes, We are aware that we'll need to be creative when it comes to funding improvements in our park system. And I'll just, I can speak to the process that happened here at Springbrook Nature Center, which is a City of Fridley park, that the primary mechanism that we used to improve this park was a $5 million grant from the state of Minnesota that was received through the bonding bill process. And I would invite everybody to, as you leave this meeting, if you go out into the hallway here, there's a nice donor recognition wall that shows that all of us as city employees and as volunteers, we connected with businesses, civic organizations, community foundations that all made donations into our park system through gifts that came here to Springbrook Nature Center. And I think we know that that process of getting people in the community to give donations or connecting with foundations is going to be part of that process.
We're going to turn to questions that are online right now, and I'll turn that to Luke to read those or kind of consolidate some of those.
So there was a couple questions regarding the $10 a month. So I'm just going to combine two here, and the question is, will that $10 a month funding that concept, the idea of having any amount of that $10 be brought to a vote? And also, how long might that last? How long that $10 a month might last for?
So I'll begin answering with regard to the $10 a month and what that translates into. First of all, it's not decided, and it hasn't been recommended that a bond or a referendum be initiated yet. There are various ways to finance recreation park services and park improvements. What we need to know, the reason that we talk about the $10 a month is that it was the kind of the first community-wide feedback that we received with regard to sensitivity to how much people would pay for something. And so that's just the beginning, and we know that it wasn't, unfortunately, in the $20, $25 a month or something like that, that could have translated into a bonding of $50 million. It was translating into something about half. So we're at that point right now where we've got to take a look at and saying, how do we go forward with a process to take what costs $50 million and bring it down to somewhere around 25 just for starters. Now, we also have our Director of Finance here from the City of Fridley, Dan Tinter, and I'm just going to ask him to kind of just broadly talk about some of the other portions of that question with regarding bonding, but we do that with the understanding that we have not agreed to go forward to do a bond yet. We're still in that preliminary phase of saying, how do you take what people want, pare it down to what's affordable? So I'll turn it over to Dan just to kind of address a few of the questions about bonding in general.
Thank you, Wally. As I mentioned, I'm Dan Tinter. I'm the Director of Finance and the City Clerk for the City of Fridley. And to the question about the actual form of bond financing, as was referenced in the presentation, it will really be predicated on the community engagement process and how the $50 million number essentially gets pared down to a number that's acceptable and desirable for the community, and what the phasing of those projects end up looking like. And that will end up dictating how the city goes about financing those improvements, meaning that can some of it be done through issuing debt? Can the city use some cash perhaps that it has in the bank to finance some of the improvements? And then depending on that interplay, there are different types of bonds that could be issued. Some of those bonds do require a vote of the community and some do not. It will just depend on what the ultimate financing strategy ends up being. So we continue to go through the process, pay attention to some of the things that the city is providing by way of information, and there'll certainly be more information provided about how the city will be moving forward and whether or not there would eventually be what is called a bond referendum or a vote to issue some type of debt so the city could borrow money. But as Wally mentioned, that's not quite determined yet. It's just one of many paths that the city could take to finance these types of improvements.
Thank you, Dan. And for those folks who are online, if we didn't exactly get to the question that you were looking for with regarding to the financing and $10 a month, those types of questions, please continue to send in your Q&A and we'll get to that. So I'll go back to the floor here, and I see a couple more hands up.
Hi, I'm Aaron Clems. I'm on the Environmental Quality and Energy Commission, newly appointed, and it's kind of fun. I have two comments. The first is the Mississippi River is one of those things that really defines this community. I get out on it a lot on a kayak, and I see a lot of folks also enjoying it. It's not a physical like land space in the park system, but it's really important, I think, to keep that in mind, and access to the river. You're seeing folks like on the other side of the river in Brooklyn Park, for example, partnering with Paddle Share. I think there's some talk about that. That's a kayak rental place where you can get a kayak out of a vending machine. It's a really cool idea. But also the water quality is important. I mean, about 1 million Twin Cities residents get their drinking water from Fridley. And Fridley's not one of them, actually. We get our drinking water from the groundwater, right? But there's both the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul get their drinking water supply here in Fridley. And keeping that water clean is really important, right, for public health and recreation in parks. And so I love to see that emphasis too. The second thing I want to mention is just natural areas. I know this area is incredible, and the work at Springbrook's been amazing. Innsbrook is in my neighborhood, and it's a much less developed, more low-key, natural area, but it's one of the things that defines why we moved here, honestly, was to be close to some of these places. And there's a lot of need for habitat restoration. Innsbrook is an amazing place geologically and with some of the wetlands that are there, but they're in pretty poor shape because of stormwater that comes over the top and overwhelms the groundwater that's supposed to feed those wetlands. And so there's all kinds of cool habitat restoration activities that the community could get involved in as well. So I love to see this process, and it's really developed well, and I think that focusing on some of these like less developed aspects of the park system are also important too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jan Wright. I live in the Rice Creek West neighborhood, a few blocks north of Hayes Grade School. And during the non-winter months, I like to bike ride a lot. So I have some standard rides. One is along the trails going over to Long Lake Park in New Brighton, or I go west over the Mississippi and down into the Minneapolis park system. And I know as I'm riding, I'm probably using a combination of county trails and city trails, and I don't always know where one trail ends and another trail begins. My question is there some coordination that would occur or could occur between the county and the city so that you're not riding at one point on a pretty rough trail, and then all of a sudden you're on a great trail, and then back to a rough trail again?
Great question, and I think for me, I'll just say I've been in my position now, new position, for about 2 weeks, and I know one of the things that I'm looking forward to working on is connecting with other city staff on trails. And like you, I spend a lot of time on a bike, and I do a lot of cycling around, and it's a passion of mine. And I know that's I don't have a great answer for you, I'll be honest, but I know that's an area of interest for me, and it will be an area of focus of working with our environmental planner, our park staff, and connecting with the team at Anoka County to be able to provide quality, safe trails throughout the community. So I'll just say it's an area that I know we're aware of. It's an area of personal and professional interest for me, and it's an area that I'm really excited to be able to work on. And Commissioner Meisner, perhaps you can talk a little bit about things from the county level.
Thank you. I will just add to, I'm sorry, what was your name, sir? Jan. Okay, so I will say ideally, I agree with you, right? So when you're a resident and you're walking or you're biking, you just want things to be safe and consistent. So from the county level, like I mentioned, we have our own park system, but when these kinds of things occur, I mean, absolutely the goal for city and county is like to try to work that out. I will also tell you, I don't want to mislead you or anything, it really does boil down to money. And then how does that work where, if you're taking extra money from the county budget park system. So sometimes we can combine to make a solution, sometimes not. But absolutely, I would say that that is the ultimate goal. I don't have a specific, like, yes, we can do it, but to your point, we will be in conversations, and then for sure, my personal opinion and what I advocate for is, again, residents don't care if it's county or city, right? They just want a nice trail that's safe and consistent.
Thank you.
I see some more hands up.
Hi, Ryan Evanson. By the way, thank you for the presentation. This has been very helpful. Just a kind of a question and a comment, I suppose. Looking here through the benefits, two that jump out to me would be, this should be supporting property values along with trying to attract residents and businesses. How are we going to know that we're achieving those results as a result of this change? Initially, I was, expecting that the request was going to be we do this all at once. My thought would be a more incremental approach so that we can measure whether or not we're actually accomplishing that. Should, for example, we start to make improvements and find that we're not getting some of these results that we expected, would an incremental approach allow us to pivot, make changes, or find that there's just something unrelated to parks that's important to Fridley that's impeding the ability to accomplish these things? So I guess the thought is an incremental approach to me makes a lot of sense. And how is the city proposing to measure whether or not it's accomplishing the goals being stated?
Great question. And feel free if any of my colleagues have thoughts on that. I mean, I know we do assessments on property values. That's part of our role as a city. So I mean, that is data that we regularly collect and measure. So I think that is trackable data and information. So we always have that at our disposal, and I think we should be able to draw a clear correlation of, are we seeing that in areas in and around park developments that are happening? So, that is information that we have, and I think we should be able to measure and track that directly. So
I think another, so the city is not only doing the resident survey that we did this past February and March, but we would intend to do that on a continuing basis every other year. And then that gives us trend data. And it may not be as objective as how many people moved out of Fridley because we didn't do the parks or we didn't do the one in their neighborhood. Some of that is more anecdotal that we'll hear, but we do regular visits with our businesses. We have a business retention plan where we reach out to the businesses and say, we'd like to meet with you to talk about local issues, anything that's on your mind. And certainly we've heard about parks in the past because there's a lot of businesses that their employees will go out and use a park or walk the trails and that type of thing. So we will intend to continue to do surveys to find out about that. And there's no intention in our mind that we can do all 38 parks next year or in 1 year. It's going to be incremental. That was one of the essential elements that came from the city council 5 years ago when we were looking at doing a park improvement, and the question that the council asked was, well, when are we going to do these other parks? So that's why we're doing this, is to say, your park might not be, receive the improvements for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, but it's going to be on some rational basis of how we get there rather than, well, this neighborhood is screaming and they want something done and let's get it done, to the detriment of another park that might have been nothing done to it for 20, 30, 40 years. So we need to have that process to go. It'll be a master plan implemented incrementally. And we'll continue to do the surveys and the best way to get to let the council or the city know what's going on is to contact these people, because they contact me on a daily basis and say, I heard from so-and-so, this is what we're hearing. So that's important, is to have that, to feel free to call your elected officials and let them know what you're thinking. So that would be helpful as well. We got another hand back over here.
Hello, my name's Jim Stangler. I work with, I'm a real estate agent in Fridley here and resident for 16 years. And my kids go to Hayes and middle school. One question that I had, or I guess a concern, I work with the Fridley baseball and wrestling, and we saw the proposal, and one of the concerns that we have is, I will agree, pickleball and a lot of the newer sports, I heard that it is getting very popular. I don't know how to play. Maybe someday I'll come over and learn. So I know baseball is kind of an older sport and whatnot. And I'm here to tell you, our numbers are we have about 100 kids, and I actually did some research. Our baseball team at Fridley has been 78-35. They've been second place twice in the region. They lost twice to the team that won the state championship and got second. So our program is very strong. It's all Fridley guys. I think every coach, if I'm not mistaken, was a Fridley resident at one point and actually went to the high school. And we're trying to create ownership with our kids. We went up to the fields, and the city actually donated paint and whatnot, and we got about 30 people, including kids, and I'm just being honest with you, they look terrible. Our dugouts were probably, I don't even know the last time that they actually were painted and everything like that, and our kids actually made them walk around the field and pick all the weeds. And because believe it or not, when New Brighton and St. Anthony people come into our fields, they love them. Because why? We have 4 of them. We have 4 Little League fields right there. That creates our next problem, though, is that those kids, my kid is one of them that's going to be going to the next level. And if you remove the fields, and I know it's just a proposal, but I'm just letting you know, we don't have a lot of fields that have mounds, okay? And I also do the wrestling, and we have the wrestlers there for a reason at the middle school. That 500 feet walk across the street, we'll lose 50% of our kids, and we know that. So that's why we keep them there. And I know one of the things was to move them up to across from City Park, or City Hall, I'm sorry. There's beautiful parks or softball fields up there. Not a bad idea. It's also going to cost money to bus them. And I'll tell you right now, we will not have 55 kids. Your numbers will drop, and I bet they drop by 25 to 35% just by making them go from the school where they can walk out those doors and walk across the street to a ball field. And I'm talking like the 12 to 15-year-old, kind of right in that range. And just right now, today and next weekend, you have our Little League fields are being used. So people are coming in from St. Paul using all the different things around us. There is people using them. And, I'm definitely, of course, I have 2 daughters coming up. So I'm going to be very vested and whatnot. So I'll have 3 kids in the organization. And I promise you that our numbers will increase from 100. They will be going. COVID did take a little bit of a hit on us. But I promise you that our numbers are going to increase. We are having a huge problem right now. It's a great problem. We don't have any space for our kids to practice. Because when we come up there on a Tuesday, our fields are full when softball is going on for the girls, because the high school owns Field 4 up there. And so that was a problem that we were having is literally the fields are full. And that's awesome. That's a great problem to have. So we're actually going over to Commons and having some of our 10-year-old kids have to use those fields over there. So just so you know, I go up there on Saturdays and Sundays. There's a lot of kids using our fields. And I know baseball is an old sport, everything like that. But I'm just here to tell you that there's a lot of good things happening with the program. And I think it would be a detriment to our program to move those fields off of there. So. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's a great example of this is exactly why we created these concept plans, and we're running them back through the community because this is exactly the kind of information that we want to hear. So thank you for sharing that, and just know that you're heard.
I know we're running a little bit long according to our schedule, but I also sense that this is very valuable for you and for us. So we're going to continue this, if we may, with a few more questions.
Hi, I'm Jen Tudor. I live in the Westmore Lake neighborhood. Woo! I really love it there. We've lived there for 4 years. It's beautiful. It's lovely. And we're really excited to be here. I just wanted to talk about the fact that I think there's a real opportunity within this plan to do some post-pandemic community building and rebuilding. I think we've spent so much time apart from each other, and there's a lot of ways in which we could engage community members in doing some of the lifting around the parks. So for example, buckthorn removal in Innsbruck. Have you been through Innsbruck? I mean, it is buckthorn central up there. I was also thinking about things like, is there space to do community gardening in some of the parks where we could grow vegetables that we could give back to the community? And this is a slightly unrelated point, but I also wanted to talk about some of the connectivity amongst trails and parks. Is there a plan to get some easements through private property? Fridley is a very car-centric community, you know, classic mid-century kind of community, and all of the cul-de-sacs that we have are great for traffic calming, but they're really tough on pedestrians, bicyclists, and other non-motorized travel. So could we get more connective trails that would hook people up with the parks and with other neighborhoods more easily?
Great. Just a couple quick reflections on those questions. One of the programs that I know all of us as city staff are excited about is within the last 2 years we did create an Adopt a Park program. I know we've got at least one Adopt a Park. Oh, there's multiple. All right. Wow. Awesome. So you know, that's one opportunity. And you're right, like we've kind of forgotten how to do some things, haven't we? Like socializing and community building. There are some great opportunities for a kind of a restart on that. But I think the Adopt a Park program is a great way to engage the community in our park system, and that program has really taken off. Alyssa Cruzel, who's here with us today, has been a champion of that program. And how many parks are adopted? Amazing, yeah. So that speaks volumes as to our community, that you know people are wanting to help in the parks. You know, you brought up buckthorn at Innsbruck, and that's something too that part of my new role is we've been really successful in getting grants also to be able to do some of that work here at Springbrook. And I think you know one of the things that I want to do is to work on natural resource management throughout the park system. So that's very much on the radar. But I appreciate the comment about that, and I can't speak very well to the easements, and I don't know if there's one of my colleagues can do that. Jim Kozlucher, our Director of Public Works.
Yeah, sure. Good question, and I can tell you firsthand that we're trying to do our best to retrofit the community from that car-centric and move it in a direction that makes the connections, you know, to our parks and to our other city facilities, to businesses that are important to people. I can tell you that we struggle with that, both from a funding perspective and from, you know, just kind of a retrofit perspective, you know. So very, very difficult process to, you know, gain those connections. I can tell you a first place to look is at our active transportation plan that was updated about 2 years ago. And so any of you are interested in that, take a look and give us your feedback. And I mean, if you obviously, you know, living in the community, you see things from a maybe more finite, you know, within your area level, you know, of what people do and what their activities are and what the needs are, feel free to feed that back to us. You know, we can always use the help and advice.
So we've got about 28 parks that have been adopted by the residents. And if they're interested in doing more of that, they can go online to find more. And I think Scott Hickok, our Community Development Director, is going to add some additional information with regard to the easement issue.
Thanks, Wally. Jim, and thank you. That active transportation plan is really a great place to look. I will want to just kind of piggyback on something Ryan had mentioned earlier, just about the importance of kind of measuring how important these things are also. And it does, I think, tie into your connections through neighborhoods where we might not have connections. And part of what makes it difficult is Fridley, in its origin, tried to not be the grid system downtown center cities, but instead to be kind of curvilinear and have cul-de-sacs and neighborhoods that didn't connect. And now sometimes making those connections after the fact become a little bit difficult. But how important those connections are, I can tell you one measurement would be that our 122-acre development down on East River Road, I can directly attribute a couple 100,000 square feet of leased space in that to the fact that there were trails and availability for employees to get there by bike and to walk there. So to be able to point then to this employment population that we have and to make that connection and how important that is, people can live really close to where they work here, and if we can make those connections from where they live to where they work and not have to get in the car, that's a real big thing. So Jim points out that active transportation plan. Do take a look at that. The city has made strides to try and make those connections where we didn't have them before, but these are really good questions, and I just thought I would add that piece.
Thank you. Let's continue with a few more questions on the floor.
Hi, Pete Borman. I'm actually on the Parks Commission. I was wondering if you could address with the environmental and making the environmental improvements be friendly, that type of stuff. There should be a long-term benefit of that as far as maintenance. And is there one way of pointing that out and helping? And as being, you were talking about the easements, I have one of those going through my yard. It's lovely at times, and at other times it's not that good. So I live over in River Edge Way by Stevenson Elementary, and there's an easement that goes past my yard to ties River Edge Way to 61st. It's wonderful. I've met a lot of neighbors, met a lot of people, but then there's a lot of trash. I try to keep it clean. I have pointed out to a lot of the neighbors walking through, and they've actually helped police it. But it's got its pluses and minuses, so thanks.
So Pete's already a park champion.
Yeah, just a couple of quick notes on that, and I was reminded that to circle back on a previous question, a couple of our park plans, again, they're just concept plans, but we did incorporate community gardens into a couple of the park concepts. And there's also one of our parks that included a concept for what we call an edible orchard, which was like some fruit-bearing trees that would be sort of just available for community use and harvesting. So there's a few pieces there, and environmental stewardship is integrated into this entire concept plan. So many of the park concepts include pollinator gardens, things like no-mow grass, so just areas that include species of grasses that don't need to be mowed on a regular basis. So we really have been very mindful and thoughtful about improving the sort of environmental quality of our parks.
Okay, we have another question.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jill Packey, and we have lived in Flannery Park. Walter, was it? Right on. For actually 23 years this month. Moved in when my oldest daughter was 6 months old. And I remember someone from the city came out to Flannery Park one time because the old park equipment needed to be updated. There was a giant silver metal slide that was super fun and scary. So, and my husband and I showed up with our two daughters, and so we basically got to pick the park equipment that is still there. So that's one of those that's about 20 years old. I mean, right, you guys do a really, really great job of keeping it updated. And since we've resurfaced the tennis courts and added pickleball lines, there's been more people at that tennis court in the last, what has it been now, 2 months than I think I've seen in a really long time. So really, really appreciate even the small things. So I guess, well, and I'm also super grateful that we saved Springbrook. So thank you. It's super awesome. We come here a lot. But I think I just wanted to do a shout out for Flannery. What I've noticed is it's continued to degrade. There's a little driveway with the hockey rink, but people have made that now a parking lot. So that softball field on the south end just continues to look ickier and ickier. The other day, I sent a picture to you guys. Thank you, Alyssa. Because like everybody who came to the park, there were probably, 15 cars that had made a parking lot right up by the shelter. So, and I know there's concerns, right, for safety and if we add a parking lot, does that draw some unwanted attention? But I have to say how it's starting to look, it's just really kind of sad, right? For us who, I drive by there every day. The porta potty seems to move everywhere. Sometimes it shows up right by the street, and sometimes it's back by the shelter. So I don't know. I had a hard time saying no to any of the ideas that were on the Flannery Park thing. I think keeping the fields, I think keeping tennis courts and pickleball, doing some things for all ages at that park, because I've also seen a lot of young families in our neighborhood that I've never seen in our neighborhood, which is super exciting. So thank you for the effort, and I really hope that we get all of the community so we don't run into a funding issue and we hit a roadblock. I know some of my neighbors, I think, are a little skeptical, so I'll talk to you about how I can maybe help with that. But thank you.
Yeah, wonderful summary and wonderful feedback. Thank you.
I see there's still hands up for park questions, and I'm going to take one over here and then one back here and over there. And there's 2 more over here, so I see 4 more questions. Are there more on parks? 5, 6. Mayor, can we keep going? We got 7. All right, staff, you got to hang in there a little longer, okay?
Good morning, Angie Nolan, lifetime Fridley resident, and the mom of 3 very active boys. My question is, throughout this process, I've heard a lot of great collaboration with Anoka County, and just wondering if there's been collaboration with the Fridley schools. To echo Jim's comments, very active boys that do baseball, do soccer, are now learning pickleball, and knowing that I live on 7th Street, just south of the community center, and seeing how many students are using the parks at Commons, using the area behind the high school, next to the community center. Has there been collaboration with the school? Could that be another partner to help us find solutions as well as have input? Thank you.
Yeah, I will assure you that we have had multiple meetings with school district leadership regarding this parks plan. So there's been multiple points of contact there and opportunity for us to kind of share what our thoughts were, and we did gather some feedback on from the school district on sort of their, especially there in Commons Park. I mean, that's the adjacency of that park with the school district is really critical for use of the park. So we have been in close communication and will continue to be in close communication with the school district on our park plan.
Yes, thank you. We do have a lot of resources to share with each other, so we'll continue to work with them.
Hi, I'm Steve Schmidt. I'm a business owner and property owner in Fridley. And I've got to run, so I can't wait. I know it's a park question, but I want to make the statement that Fridley is very business friendly, unlike most cities and suburbs. So I would suggest that we hit up all the businesses for one-time contributions, or even better, like an ongoing yearly contribution. And hit the businesses up hard, push them. And like I say, the businesses that are here, we kind of owe a debt to Fridley for helping us get in and working with us. But along with that, the businesses would like recognition. Put a brick in the ground, give them a plaque for their lobby, or recognize them somehow. But hit the businesses hard. Thank you.
Thank you,
Steve.
Yeah.
I'll be quick because I think there's still a lot of people with questions. Eric Evanson, just started on the Parks and Rec Commission, and my wife and daughter, we've lived here about 4 years in the Innsbrook neighborhood, so it's been tremendous for us. Just a couple things. There's a lot of goals in this plan, and I'm excited, super excited. Selfishly, for my ability to enjoy some parks with my daughter and things like that. One of the things I'm thinking about, though, in terms of the goals of enriching home values and businesses and things like that, a comment is let that be one of our prioritization frameworks when thinking about where to start. We want to bring people into this community to visit, and we want to get started in ways that are going to have the most impact first. And let's look at those areas that are going to revitalize not only the parks and the neighboring homes, but the businesses, and make this place really attractive. I live next to, like I said, Moore Lake Park in the Innsbruck area. There's a strip mall just north of there. There's a lot of vacancy. Wouldn't that be exciting if we could get a lot of businesses moving in there? And when a lot of nice parks are around, a lot of people are going to be there. Let's build that community up and look at where there's opportunities just outside of some of these park systems. So that's just a prioritization comment. And then my other thing is, when is all this possibly going to start? What does that time frame look like? We want to finance this, yes, but are we talking years, months? What does that look like?
Thank you. I think the schedule is such that it doesn't exist yet. We gotta know where, when we can get things started. Certainly, it's going to take about a year before we can get through all of this filtering process. So I guess we got to be patient. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Sarah Byrne. I grew up in Fridley. My parents grew up in Fridley. I'm also a Flannery Park resident, yay. I actually own the property directly next to the hockey rink. And so it's my backyard that everyone is parking in, which is great sometimes, not so good other times. Definitely a concern. I have a 12-year-old and a 2-year-old baby. So we live right on that park, love that park, lots of kids there. I guess one of my questions is how much, when it comes to the community outreach, are the homeowners with the adjacent properties being listened to versus just the community at large? What does the community want to see versus what are these residents who it's their property value being directly impacted? I know that the Flannery Park, one of the things going in is that parking lot directly next to my house. We've already had people try to break in multiple times. I've had to put up bigger fencing. It's a concern of mine to be living next to a parking lot, especially in a quiet neighborhood that it's very inviting for people to come hang out at that parking lot. I know that on the Rice Creek Trail, there used to be a parking lot that was offset that's actually been closed now for a few years due to kids drinking in the parking lot, drug deals going on in the parking lot, and it was so bad that they blocked off that parking lot. And so my question is, if we're blocking off other parking lots, why are we inviting parking lots into these quieter neighborhoods? Could we not, I've seen stalls coming in off of the street so that it's not really like a parking lot set back, but more just parallel parking, that sort of thing, especially in Flannery. It's on this whole corner, we could have stalls instead for just on the street parking, which I don't think would invite as many, issues. So I guess, my concern is the parking. I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, thank you.
Great, and I think this is a good example of, it's one of those that I can't give you an answer and say, we're gonna take that plan and tear it up, but we're hearing you right now, and it's a great example of why we're committed to resident engagement throughout this process. And so we have heard you, and we're going to look at those plans and know that you can reach out to us anytime with those concerns.
Okay, we got another question.
Hi, my name is Leanne Wiley, and my sister and I grew up in Fridley in the Craig Park area on 79th and East River Road. And I have such great memories of growing up in the Fridley Park and rec system. We were in Craig Park all the time, summer recreation programs. It made such a huge community. You got to know kids that maybe lived 3-4 blocks away, which I just love that sense of community. And we had ice skating in the winter and the little warming house. And I know that the community parks are to draw the community together, but some of the focus with some of the smaller parks would be nice, like looking for fields. That gentleman is gone, but we grew up playing softball in Fridley as well. We played at all the city parks. You'd have practice at different parks throughout there, and then you'd have games once a week. And I know that whole, what do you call it, the whole system of baseball, softball is different now than when I grew up, because that was quite a long time ago. But anyway, I just love that sense of community. The one thing I love is that I walk around Craig Park every day. I walk through River's Edge Park every day on 79th, and people take pride in that park. And I know that there has been some concern because it is such a nature area. There's eagles that nest on the island right in the river. I like the idea of the kayaking. I see the people kayaking down the river all the time, but it gives me some hesitation because I don't want that natural environment for the swans, the fox, the different wildlife that's in that area. And it sounds like that is all being taken into consideration for sure. But this is super exciting. I'm so excited about it. I'm excited to be a park champion, and I made sure that all of my neighbors went online and voted because I saw the little cards put in the parks every day. I'm like, you guys go vote, because that is one thing that with the pandemic and walking my dogs every day and working from home, I have met so many people in my neighborhood. Our neighborhood, and Mandy lives in my neighborhood, there's young children everywhere. And so we are setting them up for success for the next generation. And I hope that they have as many wonderful memories as my sister and I do have growing up in Fridley. Keep up the good work. You'll hear my voice.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So, hand over here.
I'm Rod Trockey. I live over on Rice Creek. And I don't really have a problem with paying $10 a month. Immaterial. What I came here for was, we have a little park over on 2nd Street, right off of Mississippi. And if you drive by there, you'll see cars parked on both sides of the street. And one of these days, the kids are going to be running out, crossing the street. They're going to get hit. So I think it's about time somebody does something about it, like putting up no parking signs, at least on the park side, down by the park. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw our staff writing down some notes on that, so thank you. Other hands up on parks.
Hi, I'm Tracy Wuchter. I live on Far Lake, so in the Innsbruck area too. But I found out about this parks program because they put one of those little signs out in front of Far Lake, and that's where we always walk. And I saw it and read it and looked at it, and I was like, oh, concept plans for the city. I had no idea. So I have talked to Alyssa a few times and gotten handfuls of brochures from her, and I don't know, I probably visited 100 neighbors that live around Far Lake, and I was just surprised by how few of them also knew that this was happening. So I know you want resident engagement and continual feedback. So maybe some good ways to get that would be, I don't know, more signs at the park, or, you know, talk to all the block captains. I met a couple block captains on my walks. I didn't know were block captains either, but now I'm getting emails from them. Also, you know, let us adopt park volunteers. Let us all know so we can talk to the people that are in the parks. And, you know, I know you've been doing the social media, and even I read the city newspaper religiously and the Sun Focus all the time. So just, I think, more information out and about. And I don't know, just because I mean, I'm just an adopted park volunteer, and I saw the sign, so I went around and talked to a lot. So yeah, there you go. I guess it was great. I met tons of neighbors and had lots of great discussions, and gave them each one of those brochures about how to put their feedback in, which was nice. I've been to buckthorn removal at Innsbruck many times. I mean, up until the pandemic, it was like usually there was a fall one and a spring one where a little group would come, and I don't know if that just needs more advertisement too, as far as getting people in there to do that. And I guess my biggest concern is if they're going to put a pollinator rain garden in my backyard, which I'd be all for, is how do you maintain that long term when it's right backed up to a forest? The forest, I mean, right now, like a tree fell down there a couple years ago into the grassy area, and it's just there. No one removed it. They just mow around it. And so, I mean, like already we've lost like a 6-foot by 10-foot area of the park just because the forest has come in and overtaken that. So how are we going to maintain a pollinator rain garden that's in that same place where it's just going to get overtaken by the forest? I don't know.
I think we need to get your contact information, and Rachel working on our staff will reach out to you, and we'll be working with you on that. I think that's something we can help you with. With regard to the rain garden issues, yep. Working, right. If Scott Hickok here will take your contact information, and she'll call you. So, and it's just so good to hear that some of our outreach is getting out there. So thank you. You hear that, council? We're getting feedback that it's positive.
Look how you did. I mean, that's what we need. That power that's going on right here.
You're asking about who here has heard about all this and done all these things. I mean, the people that are in this room, we have all done. How do we reach those people that aren't here, aren't involved?
We want your input. And we need to know what those ways are, right? I mean,
Other questions on parks? One more.
My name is Natividad Seefeld, and I'm president of Park Plaza Cooperative. It's a manufactured home community in Fridley, right on Highway 65, and we are resident-owned, so we mandate ourselves pretty much. With the help of the city and our police department and fire department, we have great champions behind us. And one of our thoughts, or our issues, was when Highway 65 had a revamp, and we had a sidewalk put in through our little entity, of course. So we get people of all different backgrounds walking through our community every day, and it's been a plus and a minus, which is fine, so we're all for that. But the lady left here, there was a question on grant funding. So are we looking at grant funding through the state as well as federal, and getting like what we would call a rebate for doing something specific, in your home or whatever? Are there initiatives for making the parks disability accessible? So when you do outreach for grant funding, do you find that you may get more funding that way if you're making a percentage of your parks accessible to all? Is anybody doing that? So I didn't hear a response back on the grant funding part of that.
Thank you. So with regard to grants, they are always something that we can use to supplement or offset the costs. Grants are never the best way to go about implementing a plan, because if you don't get the grant, then the neighborhood is going to be disappointed that we can't get the project done. So yes, I think this city does one of the best jobs I've ever seen in terms of finding grants and making projects work as a result of it. It gets a little confusing trying to get projects done sometimes, because all of a sudden a grant comes in and we have to get a project done. So we do identify lots of grants that are out there, and we're going to seek them aggressively. And it's always great to know that there's people who are successful in getting them out there like you. So we're going to turn to you to ask how we can get that done. But as any other staff want to make any other comments regarding grants?
So I can tell you that there was a time some decades ago where there were a lot of federal grants for things such as wastewater plants and infrastructure or parks put out by the federal government. Those days are gone. We don't have those kinds of programs necessarily. Now that doesn't mean that certain aspects like ADA that you point out, or let's say a recreational trail, the DNR has some grants available. They're very competitive. There's also stormwater infrastructure that somebody else mentioned. So those are the kind of, we'll target those areas, but like a wholesale grant program to fund like half of a park system retrofit, it doesn't exist at this time.
Other continued questions about the parks? Follow up?
So are we also, I say we because that's how we work in our community. There is no I in team, correct, right? So it's always about we. Are you looking to partner with any of the entities that do disabilities and finding that maybe that's an incentive program? We've had some really great success in our communities working with the Rochester Mayo in putting in a complete playground and basketball court, and it is unbelievable the amount of money we were able to get by partnering with the Mayo. So there are other entities besides the federal government, and being on a committee right now trying to get opportunity to purchase the bill done, it can be done. You just got to take the time to find it or find some champions that will work with you. So they're never gone.
And just as a reminder, as the mayor said, there's a sign-up sheet outside for the champions for the parks. So, okay, well, I think we're reaching the point of transition with regard to the town hall meeting, concluding our first part with regard to the park master plan and the update. I'll just kind of call for any last questions about park master planning. Well, I would say this. First, I want to just check with Luke that there weren't any other park master plan. And okay, so I think what we're gonna do is take the information that was gathered here today, summarize it, make it available, get it back out to you. If you signed up for this meeting and you gave us an email, we'll include you on that, and then that's something that you can share with your neighbors and friends. So we'll get that out. We'll get it out on social media. We'll have it on our website to just summarize what took place today. Second of all is that we will bring forth to the City Council a request for direction, and that we've completed, the staff has completed the direction that the City Council gave us to investigate how can we make park improvements equitable across the entire city and continue to make it a lively part of life here in Fridley. And we've concluded that phase, and now we'll ask for the next phase, which I think will probably focus on how do we, with citizen input, take the $50 million and get it into a price range that's doable. That's both that balance, that's what people can afford, and then also what the city can reasonably extend itself if we're going to debt finance this, how we can do that, to be very upfront and forthright with the community, how that's going to be done, for these are your parks. So those I think are and then we'll get that done within the next couple of months here, because we want to make this a part of our budgeting process into next year, where the city is already beginning its budgeting process for 2022. So any resources and that we might need, we can bring to to that discussion. And so then part of that resolution would be to engage with the public to say, okay, help us, look to those champions who are willing. And a champion doesn't mean that you're there just to get something, but to preserve, maybe it's to preserve something in your park that you want to preserve. So that's what a champion does. And so we'll be reaching out as part of continued community engagement for the park master plan.
Did you want to move on to the open forum, or for a few moments, because the staff is here, and I don't know if you want to show that video or, okay.
So the mayor's referencing, we'll switch into our second part of the event here, and that is open forum on anything that's going on in the city, questions for the mayor, council, and city staff. And the city council's already been introduced to you. I'd like to introduce our city staff that's here today. We have our city public works director and city engineer, Jim Kozlucher. Scott Hickok is our community development director. Becca Helgers is our employee resources director. And Dan Tinter is our finance director, city clerk. Our public safety director in the back is Brian Werke. And we also have Mike Mayer, our Parks and Recreation, our Community Services. And also, I just want to mention some of the other staff that's been supporting this as well. We have Luke Cardona is our Communications Manager. Over here we have Jeff. Jeff has been so instrumental to all that we do in our parks, taking care of the streets and the park maintenance operations. Jeff Jensen, thank you so much. Alyssa Krusel, our Community Outreach Coordinator. And did I get everybody? So with that, we'll open up the floor and also open up our Zoom webinar to any questions with regard to city issues. First hand was up right here.
I was wondering what the status is of converting the service drive along along University Avenue into a half parkway or a walking path.
Thanks. So the status is we've got a preliminary plan. We're having one follow-up meeting with the neighborhood north of Mississippi Street, and that's tentatively scheduled for the 18th of June. And yeah, so we'll be sending out notices to the neighborhood so we can meet out on site. Yeah, they should go out next week. Okay. Hopefully back in the neighborhood if the weather permits. If it's as hot as it is today, I think we'll be back at City Hall.
There was an online question regarding 49er days, and that is operated by the 49er Day Committee, and Gordy Backlund is the chair of the 49er Days. And
the question was if there's an opportunity to fundraise, have raffles, do things to enhance 49er Days, and the answer is correct, right? There's a committee for that that is separate of the city of Fridley, right? So it's a nonprofit organization that handles 49ers Days. So Gordy and that team would welcome more volunteers and more ideas and more helping hands to figure out how they can fundraise so next year they can put on a great 49er Days for everyone.
My question is to you, Jim. We're still waiting for our street lights, and we still need help with our sinkhole.
Okay, fantastic. On this, so on the sinkhole, my understanding was that that has to do with your property. Again, we can assist to get, coordinate contractors with that. And then on the lighting, we're waiting on XL. We've got several lighting projects for them lined up for this season, so including Fireside, absolutely before winter, if I can help it. It's 2 or 3. I can't recall what we settled on. So.
All right, we have another question back here.
My name is Jordan Hurst. I live just west of Moore Lake. And I heard some discussion earlier about rain gardens and coordinating with, I believe it was Rachel Workin. I'm just here to represent our neighborhood at the corner of Marigold and West Moore Lake Drive, where we installed, or where the city installed a rain garden a couple years ago. That it turned out to be deeper than planned, and there's been some standing water issues. I just want to reiterate our concern that something is done about that and that it is communicated to the neighborhood, because everyone's kind of looking around right now and wondering, when is this going to be fixed? There's been a couple short-term solutions that have been reached, I understand, but I just, again, want to reiterate, and Jim, I see you nodding your head, that you're aware, and it sounds like you might have an update for us, but just wanted to reiterate our concern. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you for your patience. Jim, anything further to update here at the meeting?
I can tell you we have a plan for an under drain for that. We're going to try our best to put that in this year. It may be next year because the street project on Marigold got moved from 21 to 22. So if we can get in there ahead of time, though, we'll do so.
We have a question online about speeding cars at Sylvan Park. Maybe this is just a good opportunity to our public safety director to kind of address typically the tools that we have available to us to address speeding in neighborhoods and that type of thing. So traffic concerns were one of the number one concerns off of the resident survey, by the way. So Chief Workey.
Thank you, Wally. Brian Workey, Public Safety Director, Police Chief. I was hoping to get out of here without answering any questions. I was doing well. It was the Jim Kozlucher show. which I enjoyed listening to Jim. You know, yeah, as Wally said, the speeding is the issue that came up in our survey. So our officers have been out making as many traffic contacts with people. We do have some things that we can do in the neighborhoods with speed boards. Some of you may have seen where they flash speeds, and we have a sensor if they go too fast and that type of thing. So that seems to help quite a bit. But also when we do get into these neighborhoods and we start getting after speeders, we also are ticketing our own people, our own community too. So you have to remember that piece of it too. So we are aware of it. The two things that came up were speeding and distracted driving. So we are really, really getting in after speeding and distracted driving. We've been to all the roll calls, talking to all the officers about the importance of holding people accountable for those things. And that is a priority for us, and we will continue to do that. So.
And Chief, if somebody has concerns like at Sylvan Park, if they contacted the police department, we can make arrangements to put an order in to have maybe one of those speed boards put out there. Okay. And the interesting thing about those speed boards that not everybody knows is that they collect data as well on how many cars are going through, the average speed and the time of day and that type of thing. So it does give us good data on what time those the traffic is of concern to us. So another question.
Not really a question, I'll just talk to Brian, but East River Road is such a huge area for speeders. When I was, 10 years old, we used to ride our bikes back and forth from my neighborhood to Rice Creek on a little path like this. But now it just seems people treat East River Road as a raceway. And the speeds are like 65, and of course I'm going like 42, 43, and I'm getting people that are riding up on just almost like, and I'm like, I refuse to move over because the speed limit is 40, and I'm getting old because now I could get on my soapbox about it, and I read in one of the Fridley where it explained why the speed limit is 40, because there's residential people right off East River Road, so I really understand it, but people don't, and we have people traveling from Coon Rapids through to downtown and other 694 to get there, but the speed is, if I ever get a ticket, I'm going to be pissed off. But it's really dangerous.
Yes, that's an interesting comment, and we've heard, this is my 26th year of being here at the police department, and that's probably the most common speeding is neighborhoods and then East River Road. And I will say this, and I don't have the research in front of me, but the most stops and the most tickets given in the city of Fridley are on East River Road. And I will say that. It is a unique road that's only 40 miles an hour. It took us up towards Osborne where it's 45. It is unique, but you'll see officers sitting there all the time. And because we do get so many complaints that we probably work East River Road harder than any street. That's for anybody that's here. Now you know that on East River Road. Slow it down. Take University or whatever, but that is the one we probably ticket the most. So,
A comment here from Walter.
So I just wanted to again commend these guys. I've had one or two, maybe three complaints in the neighborhood. If you email these guys, the things happen so fast, it's unbelievable. So I appreciate that. But on the financing end of things, I think you're the guy, right? So. So, yeah, you thought you were going to get them. So, somebody brought up earlier about a one-time fee or whatever for businesses to participate and give to the community, to make things happen quicker. Could there be some sort of gradual, tax or fee for the neighborhoods or for the communities to just gradually pay into and at some point have it end in 2 years or 3 years or whatever, let's say?
Well, thank you for the question. Yes, it would be possible to put together some type of program that would allow perhaps businesses or interested parties to pay a fee or to donate money to the city to support parks. It's worth noting that it would be more challenging to have a fee that would be applied to the entire community. If that were to happen, there are certain city charter provisions that basically put together a longer process, really a vote, for those types of fees to be instituted. So It's possible, but there is more of a process that the city would have to go through to accomplish something like that. In the event that the city were to issue bonds, it depends on the type of bonds that would be issued. It would get calculated differently for the different types of bonds, but those taxes essentially would be applied to everyone, and they would happen over a 15 or 20-year period, not necessarily a 2 or 3 year period, but something along those lines where you would just pay so much each year for the city to service the debt that would be issued to support the park improvements. But generally, yes, the city could put together some type of program to allow folks to maybe pay more or contribute more, or like the gentleman said, to hammer the businesses. I mean, I think there would be opportunities to put some alternative financing together to help buy down the cost of the overall plan. The question was, what period of time would the $10 apply? So the $10 that was included in the slide was from the resident survey. That was just the amount of money that people were willing to pay. The $25 million figure, we essentially reverse engineered it and figured out, well, if people are willing to pay $10, what would that mean for bonds? That ends up being a 20-year bond. And I think we assumed a certain interest rate. And some of those things will float. Sizing will be different. Number of years may be different. Interest rates may be different. As the city manager mentioned, there are any number of factors that will influence what the ultimate amount, and then if there is a tax, what that tax ends up looking like in terms of property taxes.
I know there's two more hands were up, and then I'll make the final call to those on Zoom if they have a question. So we'll take the first one from the floor here.
Thank you. Terry Pierce, resident for over 44 years in the same house off of Rue Street. For Chief, question. I noticed, not even because of the pandemic, but there's a lot more solicitation along the sides of the roads and that. 85th is really bad there between Northtown and the university there. What is the law in the city of Fridley for that, and how do you coordinate it with the surrounding cities?
Well, for the coordination part, mostly each city is on their own. We do have some panhandlers, a lot of them off of 694 and University and 65. So the first thing is that people do have the right to stand somewhere with their sign. That's their First Amendment right. We would allow them to do that. We have no issue with that. But once they leave their area to go take money or something from a car, they are now soliciting, they are now impeding traffic. And in all honesty, majority of the time what we'll do is we'll stop and talk with them and move them along to keep them going. But if it's a constant problem or we're getting constant calls to the same people, we will address it, possibly write citations, possibly jail them for that. So I think we do a good job in that in Fridley. I mean, it ebbs and flows a little bit, but I think most part, and I know on 85th and it is a problem there. I want to say that's the Blaine side, but because there is a Blaine side, a Coon Rapids side, a Fridley side of 85th, believe it or not. So we do work together. We try and work together. So, but we're well aware of it, and I think in Fridley we do a real nice job in dealing with it. But it seems to just be a constant problem, and we're seeing it getting worse and worse in the last few years, no doubt.
Think up your questions.
Thanks, Wally. I just wanted to comment on about East River Road. So East River Road is actually a county road. So there is a formula. Don't ask me what that formula is, but that's what guides the speed limit. And unfortunately, then Brian has to enforce that. And then just so you know, so Fridley, there's more than this, but Osborne as well as Mississippi are also county roads. But just for your edification, it gets a little confusing sometimes.
Okay. One additional question back here.
Hi, my name is Karina, and I've lived in Fridley for 4 years. Last summer, we just moved into the new townhomes by City Hall. So my question is for Brian. We have a neighbor that's very loud. I've called many times. I'm not sure what can be done.
Unfortunately, I know who you're talking about. I know more full name and date of birth than you'd ever imagine in the city of Fridley. You know, what I would like to do is when the meeting gets over, if we could just have an individual discussion, I think we can do some help for you. Yep, thank you.
Another question.
Yeah, so it's not really a question, and it's so not prepared, and I didn't come here to ask this question, so I should be probably more formal when I talk with our council members. But I don't know if anybody has heard this, but I work from home now and have for more than a year because of the pandemic, so super grateful that I can do that. I sit in my sun porch, and we are in Flannery Park on 73rd and a half, double-ended cul-de-sac, so 73rd is directly south of us, and so is Onan, Cummins, whatever the name is. An observation, because I am there every day, it certainly seems a lot louder than what it used to be. I mean, on one hand, that's really great, right? Because the business is booming and they're operating a lot, but they're kind of loud, and like we can't open our windows, at night to sleep because it's so loud. And then traffic too, it seems like it has really picked up on 73rd, which is interesting because, I mean, it only goes, for Fridley, it only goes so far, right? And then it goes into Mounds View, right? So it's difficult, maybe that's part of a county road, because I think it becomes H2, so that's a county road. But I don't know, again, I should probably be more organized and formal when I bring that up, and I didn't come here to do that, but I was just wondering if the city has been hearing anything about that, if there's, and I'm assuming the business is probably aware and does their best to mitigate noise coming from their operations, but expansions and whatnot. So again, thank you for letting me just say that kind of off the top of my head. Thank you.
Thanks for the comment. Again, I'm Scott Hickok, Community Development Director, and some of those types of comments or questions, concerns come through my office, and I would be glad. I've got a contact for you. We do, from time to time, go out and monitor sound to make sure that we understand, too, whether it's within the state guidelines for sound. And this is, I guess, one of the first comments that I've heard on that, but I'd like to give you my card. We'll talk. I'll give you a connection there also, because they are very, very good to talk to, and also I think they've been very good neighbors, and so just for you to have a contact, I think would be a good thing, and I can make that for you. You bet.
Any other questions from the floor? And I'll just close my comment by saying thank you. Oh, we had a question. Where? Oh, question from online. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. There was a question about littering signs to be placed in parks. And so there was reference that some other cities have them up at perhaps they're more effective. So we're going to take a look at that. Littering signs in parks. No littering parks. Do not litter. Do not litter. So I want to just close my comments by saying thank you for taking your time out to give us feedback on how we're doing. I want to also thank our staff for coming out and putting the investment into this town hall meeting. And it is just an example for you what they want to hear from you. They'll be more than happy to call you, to talk to you. That's what you saw example today is what I see every day from our department directors, is that when somebody calls, they take it seriously and they respond. And we might not always be able to do what you want, but we're going to respond to you, and we're going to do the best we can to satisfy you and your concerns. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the mayor to make a few closing comments. We also have a video that we'll take a look at afterwards for those of you who want to stick around for that on the residential survey. Mayor?
Thanks, Wally. Well, I want to thank all of you for taking time, whether you're on Zoom or in person here, to give us your comments. It doesn't end here, as you can understand. We'll try to keep you informed, and you do the same with us. So I think a round of applause is in order for, give yourselves all a round of applause for your engagement, involvement, and the city staff. Thank you. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Try to stay cool, right? And feel free to contact myself, your ward council members, councilmen at large, city staff. We're all here working together as a partnership. And I want to thank you all for becoming our partners and our champions of the parks. We'll continue this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And just as a brief introduction to the residential survey, if you like, we're going to have a little video on that. And then also to encourage you to go out and sign up for the Park Champions and outside. Thank you. How are we doing and what can we do to improve upon? Two essential questions the City Council wants to know more about from our residents. Hi, I'm Wally Weisopel, City Manager of the City of Fridley. To better understand these questions, the City Council authorized a survey of residents. It was conducted this past February and March by the Morris Leatherman Company. The survey was designed to assess the quality of life in Fridley and measure resident satisfaction with city services and with our staff. It also included questions to help plan our future. 400 households were randomly selected to answer the survey by phone. All households in the city had equal chance of being selected, and the sample surveyed was demographically representative across the entire community. The last time the city conducted a survey like this was back in 2013. These results are now in, and you can visit fridleymn.gov/resident survey to view the results in detail. We are also in the process of informing our residents the results of the survey through digital and print communications. When you dive into the survey information, you will learn more about the survey methodology, the demographics of the residents, and you can also look at questions in the results and read summaries of those results. These results have been shared with the City Council and our staff, and each of these groups will be using the survey to help shape and mold current and future city services and projects. We hope that these results will provide you with the information you need to get involved and participate in the Fridley community. As you are reviewing the results, we invite you to share any feedback or ideas or questions. Our top priority is continuing to make Fridley a friendly, responsive, and driven community. Thanks for tuning in.